Once upon a time, at the edge of a very busy market, stood a very beautiful and colorful ice cream truck. The melodies from the truck had a magical way of drawing the attention of children, who always cheered and ran with excitement when they heard it. The ice cream man, nicknamed Mr. Ice by the children, was a calm and friendly looking man. He wore a spotless white uniform and a hat that partly covered his face, which no one had fully seen. His hands were always cold, as though the ice cream itself flowed through his veins. Children adored him because of his ice cream, but many adults in the village felt uneasy about him. Mr. Ice never sold ice cream to adults. I only cater to children, he said calmly whenever an adult approached his truck to buy some ice cream. There was something about his tone that made them step back with unease. Although the children loved him because of his ice cream, many believed that something was off about him with the way he only sold to children. Some children even stole their parents' money to buy the ice cream. Others went as far as lying to their parents, claiming that they needed the money for school supplies or errands. The ice cream was unlike anything that they had ever tasted. Sweet, creamy, and oddly addictive, but Mr. Ice always had one strict rule: eat it here, never take it away. He repeated this every time he handed out a cone, his calm but firm tone leaving no room for argument. Children quickly gobbled down their ice cream in his presence, sometimes burning their tongues from eating too fast, afraid of breaking his rule. No one dared to question him, for those who did experienced strange and terrifying consequences. The children began to fight amongst themselves for the chance to buy the ice cream, shoving each other and snatching coins. Some children stopped attending school, lurking around the market all day, in hopes of hearing the ice cream truck's melody. Despite all this, Mr. Ice remained calm, serving cone after cone with his faint smile and warning, eat it here, never take it away. One evening, a girl named Ifoma gathered enough courage to ask him why. Why can't we take it home, Mr. Ice? She asked timidly, and Mr. Ice looked at her for a long moment, his faint smile freezing in place as he responded in a cold voice, colder than the ice cream that he sold. Rules are rules, he said. You wouldn't like what will happen if you break them. Terrified to the bones, Ifoma nodded and finished her ice cream without a word. The truth was darker than any of the children could ever imagine. Every cone eaten in his presence did not just satisfy a craving, it did something to them that none of them could understand. With every bite, the children's laughter, joy, and innocence faded. The sweetness of the ice cream masked the darkness that resided within. Among the many children who had fallen under the evil spell of Mr. Ice was Abiodun, a small boy with wide innocent eyes and a bright smile that had dimmed since the ice cream truck first arrived in the market. Abiodun's family was poor, and his mother, Mama Abiodun, had been sick for weeks. Her coughing fit had grown worse, and the little money they had was carefully saved for her medication. One afternoon, Abiodun heard the familiar melody of the ice cream truck as he walked to the pharmacy. It was with a small pouch of money clutched tightly in his hand that he was meant to use to buy his mother's medication. The sound called to him like an enchanting song as his heart leapt for excitement. He had always heard his friends talk endlessly about the creamy magical taste of the ice cream, and he longed to experience it for himself. As the truck came into view, the children were already gathered, waving their money and cheering. Abiodun stopped in his tracks. He looked down at the pouch of money in his hand and then back at the colorful ice cream truck. The sweet aroma of the ice cream filled the air, making his mouth water. The temptation was too great to ignore as Abiodun made up his mind to get a cone. I'll just use a little money, he thought to himself, believing that his mother would not notice. Abiodun joined the line of children. his heart pounding with a mixture of guilt and excitement. When it was his turn, Mr. Ice greeted him with a faint smile. "What flavor would you want, little one?" Mr. Ice asked Abiodun, his eyes calm and low. "Vanilla," Abiodun whispered, handing over the money to him. Mr. Ice reached into the freezer and handed him a perfectly swelled cone. "Enjoy," he said, his cold hands brushing against Abiodun's hands as he handed him the ice cream. Abiodun devoured the ice cream on the spot, savoring every sweet bite. For a moment, he forgot about everything: his mother's illness, the money he had taken, and the rules that he had broken. When he returned home later, his sick mother was waiting, her face pale and her breathing labored. "Abiodun, did you get the medication?" she asked weakly as Abiodun froze in terror. He looked down at the empty pouch in his hand, realizing that he used the entire money to purchase the ice cream. "I lost the money," he stammered as his mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached out to touch his face but was too weak to speak. "Biodun, that was all we had," she said, her voice trembling as she cried. "I don't want to die," she said, knowing how grave her condition was in that moment. Most of her life, she had spent it sick and was warned about discontinuing her medication. Abiodun's guilt overwhelmed him as he watched his mother struggle to speak. Tears streamed down his face, but he couldn't bring himself to confess. Instead, he stood there, trembling, clutching the empty pouch in his hand. "Mama, I'll find a way to get the money back," Abiodun said, his voice shaky, but deep down, he knew it was a lie. There was no one to borrow from and no time to fix his mistake. That night, Mama Abiodun's condition worsened. Her coughing became violent, shaking her frail body as she clung onto her thin blanket. Abiodun sat by her side, holding her hand and praying silently. But by dawn, the house grew quiet. When Abiodun finally woke up from an uneasy sleep, he noticed his mother wasn't breathing. Her hand, still resting in his, was cold. Panic set in, and he shook her gently. "Mama, wake up, please," he cried, but her body lay still, her face peaceful as though she had finally found relief from her pain. Abiodun screamed, his cries echoing through the tiny house. Neighbors rushed in, their faces full of shock and sorrow when they saw his mother dead. "What happened, Abiodun?" one of the women asked. "Did she get her medicine?" Abiodun couldn't answer. He felt like the air had been sucked out of his lungs. His silence spoke louder than words, and the neighbors began to whisper among themselves. Later that day, as the neighbors helped prepare Mama Abiodun's body for burial, Abiodun sat in a corner, unable to stop replaying the events in his mind. The ice cream truck's melody haunted him. The creamy sweetness of the ice cream now tasted like ash in his memory. He had traded his mother's life for a moment of fleeting pleasure. The days passed, but Abiodun couldn't escape the guilt. He avoided the market completely, but yet, every night, he heard its haunting melody in his dreams and found himself roaming the forest as a dog. One fateful evening, unable to bear the weight of his guilt and the haunting visions, Abiodun decided to confront the ice cream man. He needed answers, needed to understand what had happened to him and why. The melody of the ice cream truck felt louder than ever, pulling him like a magnet towards the market. As he approached the familiar corner, where the truck always parked, the light on the truck seemed brighter, almost glowing unnaturally in the dim evening. Children were gathered as usual, laughing and shouting as they waved their money, oblivious to the darkness surrounding the man they adored. Abiodun clenched his fist as he stepped into the clearing. He waited until the last child left, licking their ice cream cone, before walking up to the truck. "Mr. Ice," he said, his voice trembling in fear. Mr. Ice turned slowly, his faint smile fixed in place. "Ah, Abiodun, back for more?" he asked, his voice calm and cold. Abiodun shook his head, his fear bubbling under the surface. "No, I want answers. What have you done to me? To my mother? Why do I see you in my dreams? Why do I feel like I'm losing myself? For a moment, Mr. Eyes was silent, his smile fading slightly. Then he tilted his head, studying Abiodun like a predator might observe a prey. Your mother's death was not my doing, little one. That was your choice. His words pierced Abiodun's heart like a knife. No, Abiodun said, shaking his head. You did something. That ice cream. It wasn't normal. It's cursed. Mr. Ice chuckled darkly, his icy breath visible in the air. Cursed? No, it is simply the price. A small price for such sweetness. You tasted it, didn't you? You devoured it without hesitation. That choice was yours. Tears streamed down Abiodun's face, but he stood his ground. I don't care what you say. You are evil, and I'll tell everyone. I'll tell them what you have done. Mr. Ice's smile vanished completely. His eyes, usually hidden beneath the brim of his hat, glowed faintly with an outwardly light. Oh, little one, he said, his voice chillingly soft. You won't be telling anyone anything. Before Abiodun could react, Mr. Ice raised a pale, icy hand and snapped his fingers. A cold, searing pain shot through Abiodun's head, and he fell to the ground, clutching his ears. The world around him seemed to warp and distort. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. His hearing dissolved into a deafening silence. When he tried to speak, his voice was gone. Panic set in as he looked up at Mr. Eyes, who now towered over him, his face expressionless and cold. You dare to challenge me? Mr. Eyes said, his voice echoing faintly in Abiodun's mind. Now, you will live in silence, unable to speak your truth. Let the world think you are cursed. Let them believe it was your mother's death that condemned you. Abiodun tried to crawl away, but his body felt heavy and numb. He stared up at Mr. Eyes, his tears freezing on his cheeks as the man returned to his chalk, resuming his calm demeanor as though nothing had happened. When Abiodun finally stumbled home, his neighbors rushed to him. His disheveled appearance and wide, terrified eyes alarmed them. Abiodun, what happened? One of them asked, but when Abiodun tried to respond, no words came. He pointed to his ears, trying to communicate, but the villagers only stared at him in confusion. He can't speak, one whispered, and he doesn't seem to hear us either. Could it be a curse? Another muttered. First, his mother dies mysteriously, and now this? Perhaps their family angered the gods. Rumors spread quickly through the village. Some said Abiodun was cursed because he had stolen from his sick mother. Others whispered that it was a punishment for some secret sin. Children avoided him, frightened by his silence and the haunted look in his eyes. Abiodun became an outcast, wandering the village in a daze. Every night, the melody of the ice cream truck tormented him in his dreams, and every night he found himself running through the forest, his body no longer his own. He would wake with muddy feet and scratches on his arms, the faint taste of blood lingering in his mouth. He realized the truth. He was becoming one of them, one of the dogs that served Mr. Eyes. Unlike Abiodun, who stole from his mother, some saved up their money just to have a taste of the famous ice cream. Akin saved up his pocket money for weeks, dreaming of finally tasting the famous ice cream everyone had talked about. The truck was parked in its usual spot, its bright colors glinting under the sun, and the familiar tune played on a loop. When Akin arrived, a group of children surrounded the truck, holding out their money, their faces lit with joy. Mr. I smiled faintly, his head tilted down as he handed each child a cone of their chosen flavor. Strawberry, please, Akin said, handing over his money when it was his turn. Mr. Ice reached into the freezer and handed him a bright pink cone. Enjoy, he said softly, smiling at Akin, whose eyes lit with excitement. However, Akin could not help but notice how unusually cold Mr. Ice's hands were when he handed him the cone. He ignored it, believing that it could be as a result of handling ice for a long period of time. Akin, holding the ice cream cone in his hand, began to lick the ice cream. He felt a strange sensation that he had never felt before. His heart leaped for joy as he heard Mr. Ice announce that he had free ice cream for all. Free ice cream for all, he said, and Akin quickly rushed with the other children as they all gathered the ice cream truck for some free ice cream. Finish it all before you leave, Mr. Ice said to the children, who hurriedly munched on it, seeing that it was already getting late. All the children were so delighted to be ending their day with such a delicious treat. Akin decided to ignore Mr. Ice's warning. He hid the free ice cream in his bag, hoping to give it to his little sister who had been sick and couldn't join the other children at the truck that day. He was sure that she would be thrilled to taste the famous ice cream that everyone had raved about. As Akin walked away from the truck, he felt a strange chill run down his spine. The vibrant sounds of the market seemed to grow distant, and a peculiar silence began to surround him. Akin quickened his pace, clutching his bag tightly as he walked. But just as he turned a corner, he heard a loud bark coming from behind him. As a pack of dogs began to charge towards him, Akin was so petrified. He held onto his bag and began to run for his dear life. He had never seen dogs that big, and Akin was not willing to risk the dogs catching up with him. He immediately remembered the ice cream man's warning not to take the ice cream away from his sight and knew that the dogs had come to prevent him from taking the ice cream home. Akin, in that moment, decided to toss the ice cream towards them, hoping that it would stop the dogs. He threw the ice cream cone as far as he could, his hands trembling with fear. The ice cream landed on the dusty path, rolling slightly before coming to a stop. The dogs halted immediately, their glowing red eyes focused on the cone. They snarled and growled at each other, circling the ice cream like predators. Akin, still panting from running, crouched behind a nearby bush watching in terror. The largest dog stepped forward, sniffed the ice cream and devoured it in one bite. As soon as it swallowed it, all the dogs froze in place. A strange silence filled the air. Then one by one, they turned to mists, dissolving into the wind. Akin's heart raced. He couldn't believe what he had just seen. He waited a few more seconds to make sure the dogs were truly gone before standing up. His legs felt weak and his entire body trembled. He walked home as fast as he could, glancing over his shoulder every few steps to make sure he wasn't being followed. When he finally reached his house, his mother opened the door and gasped at the sight of him. "Akin, what happened to you?" she cried, pulling him inside. Akin collapsed onto a chair, still out of breath. He told his mother everything: the ice cream truck, the free ice cream, Mr. Ice's warning, and the pack of dogs that had chased him. His mother's face turned pale. She sat down beside him, her hands shaking. "This is not the first time I've heard of something like this," she said quietly. "What do you mean, Mama?" Akin asked, his voice trembling. She took a deep breath and explained. "A few months ago, my friend's son Bayo came home in tears. He said he had been chased by strange dogs after trying to bring home ice cream from the same truck. At first, I thought he was just making up a story, but now I know it's true." Akin's eyes widened in surprise. "Why is this happening, mother? Why does Mr. Ice only sell to children? And why do the dogs chase anyone who tries to take the ice cream away?" Akin asked his mother, who shook her head, unable to provide an answer to his question. The next morning, she arrived at the market. Mama Bayo was so shocked to hear that the strange dogs also went after Akin. All the while, she believed her son was lying and used the excuse of the terrifying dogs to eat the ice cream that she had told him to buy for her. Little did she know that her son was telling the truth. From that day on, her son Bayo began to change. His once bright eyes grew dull as his cheerful energy faded. He stopped playing with the other children and spoke less. His mother noticed this but attributed it to something else, not knowing that he was under attack. Do you think the ice cream man is behind the strange things that had been happening to my son? She asked Mama Akin, who shook her head in confusion, unsure of what to say. Mama Bayo, I would advise you to take your son for prayers immediately because what he's going through does not seem normal. Mama Bayo nodded, her face filled with worry. I think I will do just that, she said as they stood there confused. Just as they stood, the sound of the ice cream truck filled the air as he approached the corner of the busy market. Mama Akin excused herself and walked towards where the truck was parked. So many children had gathered the truck, waiting to be served and cheering as Mr. Ice handed out the ice cream cones to them with a grin on his face. His expression seemed unnaturally calm, but his grin felt forced. Mama Akin stood at a distance as she watched. A cold chill ran down her spine as her eyes met his from the distance. Mama Akin had never felt this terrified in her entire life. She looked away abruptly, pretending not to be so focused on him as he served the children his evil ice cream. She stayed hidden and observed as Mr. Ice handed out cones and repeated his warning. Eat it here, never take it away. The children, as usual, quickly devoured their ice creams, laughing and chatting. But for the first time, Mama Akin noticed how the children's laughter seemed to fade into silence as they left the truck. Their energy seemed drained and their faces slightly pale. Mama Akin in that moment had to find out the truth about the ice cream seller and where he came from because no one seemed to know where or how he got the ice cream that he sold to the little children. So she waited patiently as night began to fall. All the children had all gone home and the market was beginning to empty out slowly. Mama Akin wondered why the ice cream seller was still stationed there, knowing that no children were left to buy his ice cream. She hid behind a nearby tree, her heart pounding as she observed him. Mr. Ice stood by the truck, his calm demeanor unchanged, but then something peculiar happened. He moved his truck slowly and approached the village cemetery. Mama Akin stood behind the tree and watched as he parked the truck in the cemetery and began to chant some weird incantations. Shivers ran down her spine as some terrifying looking dogs surrounded him and began to howl. The ice cream man in that moment transformed into the most terrifying dog that she had ever seen. His eyes glowed like red fire and his teeth were sharp like knives. The other dogs bowed before him as though he was their leader. Mama Akin's heart raced. She wanted to run, but her legs felt glued to the ground. She crouched lower behind the tree, praying that she wouldn't be discovered. Mr. Eyes, now fully transformed into the monstrous dog, howled loudly. His howl echoed through the cemetery, sending chills down Mama Akin's spine. Suddenly, the earth trembled, and a dark figure rose from the ground beneath the tree. It was so dark, and its voice filled Mama Akin with fear. Have we got all the children yet? The dark figure asked the ice cream seller, who revealed that they were so close to initiating all the children in the village. Give me one more day, he pleaded with the dark figure, who growled in anger. How about the boy that broke the rule? Has he been dealt with? The evil being asked the ice cream seller, who revealed that the boy had escaped but promised to finish the task soon. He won't get away again, master, the ice cream seller said, his monstrous form trembling under the dark figure's wrath. You have one more chance, the figure hissed. Fail me, and you will suffer the same fate as those who disobeyed me before. With that, the dark figure vanished into the ground, leaving the ice cream seller and his dogs in the eerie silence of the cemetery. Mama Akin froze with fear. She knew she had to act quickly. She quietly retreated from the cemetery, careful not to make a sound. Her heart pounded as she navigated her way back to the village. She didn't stop until she reached her house, where Akin was fast asleep. She shook him awake gently. Akin, we must go now, she whispered, her voice trembling. Akin, still groggy, looked at his mother in confusion but obeyed her urgent tone. Without wasting time, Mama Akin grabbed the shawl and led her son through the dark village street to the home of the pastor. The pastor, a kind but firm man, opened the door and immediately sensed the distress. "What is it, Mama Akin?" he asked, ushering them inside. She quickly narrated everything she had seen in the cemetery, the ice cream seller, the chanting, the monstrous transformation, and the dark figure. The pastor's face grew serious as he listened. "We must pray," he said. "Evil like this can only be defeated through the power of God." As they knelt in prayer, a low growl echoed outside the house. Mama Akin's blood ran cold. She peeked through the window and saw the glowing red eyes of the dogs surrounding the house. Their shadows loomed large on the walls as they barked and scratched at the door. "Do not be afraid," the pastor said, his voice steady. "Their power is limited. They cannot enter this holy house." Mama Akin clutched Akin tightly as the pastor continued to pray. The dogs' barking grew louder, their howls piercing the night. The house trembled as if the very foundation was under attack, but the pastor's prayers grew stronger, filling the room with a sense of peace and protection. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually the barking began to fade. The dogs' shadows disappeared one by one, and the house fell silent. Mama Akin held her breath, waiting to see if the attack would resume, but all she heard was the sound of crickets outside. "They are gone," the pastor said finally, standing up. "But this is not the end. The evil in the village must be confronted and destroyed." The next morning, the pastor gathered the village elders and told them what had happened. Together, they devised a plan to rid the village of the ice cream seller and his dark master. Armed with prayers, they went to the market. When the ice cream truck arrived, the children cheered and ran towards it, but the elders stopped them. The ice cream seller stepped out, his calm demeanor faltering when he saw the group of adults waiting for him. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. The pastor stepped forward. "Your time here is over. You will harm no more children." Before the ice cream seller could respond, the elders began to pray, sprinkling holy water on the truck. The truck shook violently, its bright colors fading to dull gray. The ice cream seller howled in pain as his true form, a monstrous dog, was revealed. The pastor held up a cross and continued to pray. The ice cream seller screamed as his body began to dissolve into ash. The truck collapsed in on itself, leaving nothing but a pile of blackened ice and bones. Amid the chaos of the prayers and the destruction of the ice cream truck, a chilling truth came to light as the truck began to collapse under the force of the holy water and prayers. A dark mist emerged, swirling violently around the gathered villagers. Within the mist, faint ghostly forms of children began to appear, faces familiar to the parents and elders of the village. The pastor paused in his prayers, his voice trembling as he revealed to the people that the spirits of all the children who ate the evil ice cream had been set free. Everyone who had been under the spell of the evil ice cream had now been set free, including Abiodun, who suddenly regained his speech and hearing. All the children who had lost their laughter and joy now returned back to their normal selves as the whole village jubilated in joy. From that day on, the village was set free from the ice cream truck and its sinister melodies. The children laughed and played without fear, and Mama Akin held her son close, grateful for his safety. The village learned to stay vigilant, knowing that evil could hide behind even the sweetest smiles. The lesson to be learned from this story is that seemingly harmless temptations can hide great dangers, and choices driven by fleeting desires can have lasting consequences. It also teaches that vigilance, courage, and faith are powerful tools against evil, and that unity in a community can overcome even the darkest threats. Finally, the story serves as a reminder that not everything that glitters is gold, and we must always question what seems too good to be true. I hope you enjoyed the story.